Okay, welcome to the call. This is Noel Lyons of Well Coach Co UK, and I'm delighted today to be talking to Dr. Joe down there in Perth, Western Australia, of drjoe.net.au. So, g'day, Joe.
G'day, Noel. How you
I-
doing?
I've got to start with a good day, haven't I? And Perth is one of my favourite locations. It's just a fantastic place, isn't it? You're very privileged to be living there, to be
Um,
based there.
it, it's a good little spot. Very isolated, is known as the world's most isolated capital city, which has its advantages. There's a couple of drawbacks when you want to go anywhere. It's a bit longer on a plane. The
Well,
weather's
we'd
always
talk about
very.
San Diego later because obviously, there's got to be a reason you're going to go that far. But, Joe, I mean, essentially, you're about like DIY health. Could you just sort of explain that concept? It's like,
Yeah, look, do-it-yourself health is essentially saying that most of what influences our health is not what happens when you go to the doctor or the naturopath or any form of practitioner. It's really about the things that you do each day. And the analogy is a little bit like with your car. Yes, you can take it to the mechanic, and it's good to do that at times, but it's the things you do day in and day out, week in, week out, making sure you're putting the right fuel in and not putting the wrong fuel in, checking the tyres, making sure it's topped up with coolant, all the very little things that stop your car breaking down. So it is with your health and looking after your body. It's the foods you eat each day, the exercise that you do, managing your stress levels, drinking water, getting enough sleep, having some relaxation time, all these very much day-to-day things that the individual does for their own health are the most important things with health. And by doing all of those, it becomes far less likely that you're going to get sick or disease. It's not a guarantee. It doesn't say that it can't happen. But, Noel, 75% of the disease burden in Western countries is from what are described as chronic lifestyle diseases. These are not illnesses that strike you like a bolt of lightning from out of the blue. They are things that have come about because of years of the way people have looked or perhaps not looked after their bodies. So, rather than everybody complaining about, what the system can do or, what's going to happen with hospital beds or why can't the government pay for me to have these pills, the further we go into the future, we're going to need to be looking after our own health, and it's not difficult.
yeah. And it just doesn't happen overnight, does it? When people get something, as you say, it's been building up over a period of time. And normally, these diseases, if you like, they don't come in ones either, do they? When you first experience something, it normally means there's several other underlying conditions there present too.
Look, if people are putting the wrong sorts of foods into their body, we're talking about eating a lot of processed and packaged foods for many years, foods that are high in sugars. This will do a number of things. Obviously, it'll lead to obesity. It also makes the pancreas work harder, and the pancreas puts out insulin. Eventually, if the pancreas has had to work too hard for too long, we get what is called insulin resistance. And then the next step after that is diabetes. Now, it doesn't happen the first time you eat some fast food, and it doesn't happen if you eat fast food once every month or so. But it does happen if you're eating a lot of processed foods regularly. So, yes, you become overweight. That may increase your blood pressure, increases your risk of heart disease and stroke, some forms of cancer. Then again, if it leads to diabetes, that also increases your risks of stroke and heart disease. So yes, one thing does lead to the next, to the next. If you bring it back to its very basics, so much of this is genuinely avoidable. And it really does come down to the decisions people make every day. So the message really needs to be that power is in your hands. People have become used to the idea that there's nothing really that they can do about their health, that the only things that matter are, what the doctor does or what the government does or. And there is a role for doctors, there's a role for other health practitioners, there's a role for a system when people do get ill, but we can certainly do a lot to keep ourselves well, and it's our responsibility really to be doing that on a regular basis.
Hey, we get one shot at this thing called life, don't we? So we want to give it our best. But what got you interested on that side of the track, Joe? Because most doctors they tend to be on the other side. It's a very sort of
Mm,
prescriptive, pharmaceutical sort of model. And here you are, right? Going towards the other side, which is, definitely the way forward. Um,
yeah, look, I suppose in 2003 I was at a conference in Sydney, which is across the other side of Australia, and I heard couple of the people from America. I think one was an osteopath, the other was a researcher. Anyway, they were talking about what they described as anti-aging medicine. And essentially what I was hearing from this is saying, well, really, as GPs, we should be more interested in people being healthy rather than just waiting to patch them up after they were sick. And that if we could do more to keep people healthy, we were going to be doing our jobs better, are we going to be doing more to help people, and obviously we were going to be, taking some pressure off the system. And I suppose I sort of sat back and thought, this is just very logical. If we talk about being about health, but in actual fact, it really is all about disease and what we call health systems, and this is Australia, I think the UK, the USA, pretty much every Western country, they're really disease systems, not health systems. And all the spending is really on people's diseases, not on their health. You get a subsidy, for example, if you need some diabetes medications, you don't get any subsidy if you need some vitamins, And I suppose that got me thinking and moving down some different paths, and, you start to look into different areas and start to read new things. And I suppose it's all evolved from that over the last 8 years.
Yeah, and certainly once they've got these illnesses, it's that much harder, isn't it? It's better to prevent it than it is to cope or manage it once you have it. So, moving on, what got you interested in the Weekly Fitness Challenge?
Look, there's a whole new new story. Look, probably 2009. That was the year I was getting ready to put the book out, and got some really good advice from some people saying, look, if you're going to release a book, you need a social media presence, so you need to get on these things called Twitter and Facebook, and which and what? What are these things? And anyway, so I did, and on Twitter in particular, I suppose I really did take to that. I like it, and came across a lot of interesting people of like mind. And one of them was a gentleman from the USA by the name of Jeff Hampton. And I was just seeing these tweets about something called Weekly Fitness Challenge. Oh, it's interesting. What's all this about? And I think I retweeted it a couple of times. And look, to be honest, Noel, one thing sort of led to the next, and it just started to get a little bit of traction probably through 2009. And then last year, it moved to the next stage, and sort of groups were formed, and obviously we had the first launch in August in Knoxville. But I suppose it started with tweeting, and then in putting the group together, a little bit of emailing and connecting. And the world is so small these days. I mean, here I am talking to you in the UK. I'm in Australia. Last night I had a chat with Jeff. He's in the United States. So I think it's a meeting of like minds, and the idea of reaching out to people who arguably need the most to be doing some exercise for their health, but perhaps are doing it the least, and doing it at a grassroots level really works, because all the TV ads from governments and all the preachy sort of stuff, it just doesn't cut through. People... There's no shortage of information. What there is a shortage of is applied knowledge, and somebody being prepared on the ground to go to people and say, look, here is something practical you can do. It's not about going to some government website or reading something they've sent you in the post or some jingle. It's actually about some very simple practical stuff. And hey, guess what? You can actually do it. Yes, look, over the last, I think, 2 years or so, just starting from a bit of toing and froing on Twitter, here we all are.
Well, it's obviously sort of, worked, because here you are giving up beautiful sunny Perth in January to go to San Diego, which obviously will be pretty sunny too. But what will you be talking about, Joe? I like the sun, by the way. I'm a total beach guy. Look,
I think the main thrust of the presentation, and I'll again finalise it a little bit nearer the time, will essentially be about talking to people about why, what are some of the health benefits of exercise, but we'll take it a little bit broader than that and really talk about, what are simple things you can be doing for your health. Obviously, it's a fitness challenge, so we'll be touching on that. There'll be a lot of other good people there who can talk about that area. So I'll be taking a slightly broader approach to a number of aspects of do-it-yourself health. So, people can listen to ideas about things that, they can start hopefully doing that very day that will start to improve their health.
So you'd be trying to take like an individualized approach to the people attending the convention? Yeah.
Look, and I suppose that'll a little bit depend how many people we've got there, but necessarily in giving a talk, we've got to come up, we've got to provide information that's going to be pretty practical across the board.
Mm,
So no, it won't be necessarily so much about telling individual people what they should have for breakfast on Tuesday, maybe giving slightly broader brush strokes so that people can go away and say, look, I can work with this, I can apply this. One of my favourite tips when I do talks locally is to say to people, look, something simple you can do is, instead of looking for the parking space closest to the entrance to the mall, why don't you park further away? Take the steps instead of the elevator. These are things you can start doing, today. Instead of having a can of soda, have a glass of water. These are very simple, practical things that don't cost you any money, and that you can pretty much start doing immediately.
mm. So what do you see as their biggest challenge, Joe? What's the biggest sort of stumbling block that you come up against, time after time, working with your clients?
Human beings are yeah, human beings are creatures of habit, and old habits do die hard.
Hmm.
So it does take probably anywhere between 1 and 3 months for people to get into new habits. So that's one thing to come up against. I suppose the other thing is that sometimes that sense of passivity with people that they sort of say, well, it doesn't really matter what I do. What I do doesn't influence. It's just all pretty random. And I think if we can get through to people that a lot of illness and disease is not random, and that you're not necessarily a victim of something that's just come floating in from the cosmos and struck you down, and that what you do is going to very, very, very strongly influence, how your health is going to be. Therefore, what you do matters. If it matters, and all of a sudden people will think, oh, hang on, if it actually matters, it's going to make a difference, and maybe I should be listening to this, and moving away from this notion of, well, look, I just, if I'm a victim, then it's my bad luck. In some instances, it may be. If you get struck by lightning, I dare say it is. But if you end up with a lifestyle disease as a consequence of the lifestyle that you've led, then no, you're not necessarily a victim of that. You have made some choices, and you may experience the consequences. If you want some different consequences, then make some different choices, and have some say in it.
And a large part of it is just building their self-confidence, isn't it? That they can actually make these changes. Because as you say, so
Look,
many people are caught up in habits, whatever they are, and just caught up in a reactionary mode to, whatever comes their way. Because generally people, we're all very busy these days. And
Look, that's true. And some of it is saying to people that some of the myths that you hear are not quite true either. One of the ones that really is, I think, very destructive, and it's often put out by people in public health, is that it's expensive to eat healthily and that junk food is cheap. Now, you can go and buy, and I know it's hard to get hold of. You can go to most supermarkets and you can buy vegetables much cheaper than you can buy packaged food. You can buy generally a kilo of fruit in season, again, for much less than you're going to pay for any packaged or processed food. If you start eating these sorts of foods, you generally don't eat as much either, and you're getting better nutrition. You can go to a market or even a supermarket and buy things like lentils or rolled oats. Rolled oats are my favourite examples. Much better for you than any breakfast cereal and far cheaper.
sure.
In here in Perth, I can buy a kilogram of organic rolled oats. If you don't want to get too fancy with it, buy the regular ones. This is $3.50 for a kilo. I want the the non-organic ones, $2.50 for a kilogram. Now, you can't buy any sort of packaged breakfast cereal for that amount of money. But people have been convinced that it's too expensive to eat healthy food, and we can start overcoming some of those myths.
Yep.
And also the myths that exercise is difficult, and I need a lot of expensive equipment, or I have to join some fancy gym. Look, knock yourself out if you want to do that. Good on you. I wouldn't tell you not to, but you don't have to.
Great. So, Joe, it sounds like you've got a lot of very practical, very cost-effective tips that you're going to be putting forward in San Diego. Would that be correct?
Well, that'll be really. I think what people are looking for is something that's applicable to them. They don't want a lot of pontificating. I don't think people are interested in being preached to or told what they're doing wrong. I think they want something that they can take away and apply. It's almost like the what's in it for me. What can I do that's going to be fairly simple? I don't need 3 degrees in something or other to do it, and it's not going to cost me a lot of money, and it's going to be good. It's going to be good for me. So I think that's very, very much my focus through my book. For people who follow me in the social media, they'll see the same thing, and in any of the presentations or media work that I do.
So the name of your book, Joe? That's called?
It's Dr. Joe's DIY Health.
Excellent. And your Twitter handle?
Yeah, Dr. Joe's DIY Health.
Good one.
That's the first one as well, so we've kept it fairly consistent.
And finally, just your website once more is Dr. Joe.
Yeah, www.drjoe.net.au, and if you do go on there, you can subscribe to my newsletter, which comes out every week, and obviously, if you would like to, you can purchase a book.
Okay. Well, yeah, have a great time in San Diego. I hope it goes well.
Looking forward to it, Noel. Thank you.